Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. And the top story today, the implications of rising debt for older Americans. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Dr. Siyan Liu is with the Boston College Center for Retirement Research. Siyan, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. And we always love talking about these very important issues. I think it helps paint a lot of perspective for Americans and also for policymakers. Let's talk about debt, because there's a lot of debt in this country. You and the team at Boston College Center for Retirement Research looked at some of the implications of rising debt on older Americans. What can you tell us?
Yes. So what we find is that the share of older Americans in retirement with debt has definitely grown a lot in the past decade. So we were looking into the period in the late 80s to recently 2019, and we found that the share has grown significantly from less than 40% to now over 60%. So we do find a lot of older Americans in retirement end up with debt, and that may be very burdensome since they're living on retirement income.
Yeah, very burdensome. And we know that we're in an aging society. We talked about this yesterday or the day before about long-term care and the need for long-term care. When you think about someone who's a little bit older, maybe in their retirement years, they've saved an amount of money, maybe they're drawing Social Security, but then those, as you said, those are really fixed sources of income. Now you add in cost of medical care, caregiving, housing expenses. That really can put you in a bad spot financially.
Exactly. So older households have to juggle a number of different expenses on retirement income. So they having debt will definitely add to the amount of having debt would definitely add to the amount of financial decisions that they're already having to make on a daily basis.
Yeah, when you look at this type of debt, when you looked at this type of debt, I should say, because you did a lot of research here, does the debt fall into different groups? I mean, is it a particular group, like, for example, credit card debt or other types of debt? Maybe there's a personal loan or a mortgage.
Yes. So older households in retirement actually hold a number of different types of debt that we have found. So households typically have mortgage debt. That is the biggest part of the type of debt that households have. But also credit card is definitely rising, and that might be a bigger problem since they usually are associated with higher interest rates. So you have to pay a lot of costs if you're carrying credit card debt. We also looked into medical debt and student loans, and these potentially are all types of debt that could put households in financial trouble.
Yeah, and let's be clear, it's not only the retiree or the older American. This debt doesn't just get wiped off the books if someone were to pass away. This actually can be passed along, and your heirs, CM, might have to pay for this. So this is financial debt. This is debt and burden for the older American, but also potentially for their family.
Yeah, that's right. Our research, however, did not look into the potential implications on the heirs of these older Americans. So that is outside the scope of our study, unfortunately. But future research may shed some light on that for sure.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Siyan, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the policy implications for older Americans burdened by debt. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Well, Siyan, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2 this morning.
Great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a fun conversation, important conversation. Before we get into policy implications, I know you want to talk more about some of the different groups you looked at. You want to kind of give us a download on that?
Yeah, sure. So the discussion around retired borrowers have typically treated them as one group. So what our study is thinking is that not all older borrowers are in a bad financial situation necessarily simply because they're in debt. So we have separated borrowers into a number of groups. So essentially, we're teasing out what we call the financially savvy borrowers who are simply taking on mortgage to take advantage of low interest rates. And then for the other, we consider more high-risk borrowers. We further unpack their debt holding patterns, and we look into how burdensome their debt is, and also what the interest costs they're paying on their debt. And we have found that there are 4 groups of borrowers. So one of them is going to be what we call the financially constrained group. And this group is really struggling with day-to-day expenses, and they maybe have to borrow to get by. And we think that this group might need even broader policy support apart from any counseling or consolidation efforts just on their debt. And there are some other groups of borrowers that we find that may not have an obvious need to borrow, but they still hold lots of credit card debt. So we think that these borrowers may need some targeted financial education to help them not accumulate such amount of high interest, high cost types of debt. And there's another interesting group that we have found that simply has what we call too much house. So these households have mortgages that are too large, that puts a lot of liability on their households, and therefore they have to dedicate a lot of their income towards mortgage payments. And that may hurt them in the long run, as you mentioned, Jeff, before, that they have to juggle all of these expenses they face in retirement. So potentially, downsizing might be a good option for these households if we're thinking about policy responses.
Yeah, and just to kind of circle back on that, let's talk about if I'm a policymaker at the state, because a lot of states are stepping up when it comes to aging, trying to build that infrastructure that we need. So if you're a state policymaker or you're a federal policymaker, what do you take? What do they need to be thinking about? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, so I think the message, the takeaway from our study is that not all older borrowers are necessarily in trouble, and they all may need different policy solutions to address their particular needs. So understanding what type of older borrowers were the policy is actually targeting and helping is important. And our study is the first step to understand why people are in debt, and potentially policymakers and try to understand more about the particular needs, different types of needs of older households to better target support.
Yeah, and I like that you bring up financial education, because that's something that I think when you look across the broad spectrum of people, just in general, we've often talked about it at the school level, the K through 12, and also college. But let's not forget older Americans, people like my age and older. You can't know it all, and you may forget things. I know I forget things every day about finance. There's really an important component of this for policymakers that we need to improve our financial education for all groups, including older Americans.
Yes, exactly. Especially with credit card debt. And I, from a personal experience, I understand that it's very hard sometimes to understand the actual amount of debt you owe on your credit card. And when the bill comes, you see the minimum payment due, and sometimes people mistake that for the amount that they actually have to pay. So financial education will definitely help some types of older borrowers in this sense, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about it for myself. It's not only the principal, but it's the interest. And by the way, interest rates are going up. So understanding what the impact of that higher interest rate is going to mean to your overall account balance, because theoretically it would go up as the interest rate increases. Siyan, we're going to have to leave it there. Great research as always from the Boston College Center of Retirement Research. Great to meet you, and thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks a lot for having me.
And that wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow with another great edition of BRNAM. We'll have some very special guests and, of course, a great topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on safe, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
But if you're tired of the same old,
Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.